Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Patel Kumar Show, Episode 5. I am Shivam Patel, coming to you live from San Antonio, Texas, and my co-host, Mr. Kumar, coming to you live from Mumbai, India. What's up, Mr. Kumar?
Well, namaste, India, and namaste, Mr. Patel. Thank you very much. Of course, we would probably be in our exciting self introducing this show, Episode 5, where we had lined up something spectacular, of course, paying a tribute to Kobe Bryant as well. But we cannot forget what has happened last night in the NBA, where the Bucks boycotted the game against the Orlando Magic, and it was followed by teams, the other teams, and they had to cancel pretty much the entire games that were going to happen last night. And it's an unprecedented situation. Of course, the Milwaukee Bucks, it happened right in their backyard, so they had to take a stand. And there's going to be some dialogue between the players, the owners, and the NBA. And we don't know whether this season is going to continue or there's going to be some boycott. So I'll have more news from Shivam Patel, who's right there in the U.S. In the thick of the things, so he'll be able to explain better.
Yes, and the season's still up in the air right now. And in the wake of the Jacob Blake shooting last week in Milwaukee, in response, the Milwaukee Bucks decided to boycott their playoff game against the Orlando Magic. And as Mr. Kumar said, the other teams that played that day also followed. And this made a huge statement, that was covered in every major news outlet here in the U.S. And it was also very important that all the other major sports leagues that were playing, the MLS, the MLB and the NHL also postponed their games that happened yesterday. And it was a very powerful statement. And this is very significant yesterday because this is the first time, specifically in the NBA, that NBA players have boycotted a playoff game. It happened in 1981, but Bill Russell boycotted an All-Star game. So I think the players send a very powerful message, and that they want change and social and justice reform and equality. And I think that the players could continue to use their platform to enact that change. And I believe the players are very emotional and feel this way because they feel like if they weren't NBA basketball players that are on TV every day and are famous, what happened to Jacob Blake may have happened to them. And they want to be treated not as basketball players, but as human beings. This is basic human rights. And I don't know if you remember, but also before the bubble started, Kyrie Irving brought it up to the Players Association. He was like, why are we playing, in the midst of this social justice? At that time, it was George Floyd. And he was ridiculed, criticized, but he ended up, being right. And, props to the players for standing up for what they believe in, sacrificing their income and fighting for what's right. And Mr. Kumar, the players have had enough, with all these social justice incidents, with Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, among others. And now this Jacob Blake incident really was like the last straw that really the players were like, there needs to be change. And after, the boycott, the Bucks were in the locker room talking to Wisconsin's lieutenant governor, trying to figure out ways that they can make change in that community. Like, how can we better the specifically Wisconsin community, and what more can we do? Because they feel like what they've done has not been enough, and that the players, can definitely do more and use their platform to be able to reach a large amount of people. And yesterday there was a players only meeting to discuss whether to continue the season or not. And prominent voices in that meeting, with Chris Paul, of course, the president of the NBA Players Association, LeBron James, who's been fighting, for political and social justice, Kawhi Leonard, Doc Rivers, who had a very passionate speech, about Jacob Blake and about, being African American in America and how like they're not treated the same way. And these players are just trying to figure out, what to do. They did take a preliminary vote, and the Clippers and the Lakers decided not to play the season, but it's just very preliminary. And today the players are going to spend time figuring things out. What are the next steps forward? Because they did make a statement yesterday, but now there needs to be a plan forward that if we do decide to play, how can we further this social justice movement and keep the conversation going? Or if we don't decide to play, how active can we be in the communities to enact change? So those are kind of stuff that are been going on, and the players really want more from the owners. And today there's a board of governors meeting, and I think they want the owners to take a larger step, because they have really political influences and to the lawmakers and legislators that they can make significant amount of change. So right now the season's up in the air, but as the players say, this is more bigger than basketball, and I just give kudos to the players for standing up for what's right.
Absolutely, Mr. Patel, because this is an unprecedented move, and in the history of professional sports, we have never seen anything like this before. Of course, 80% of the players in most leagues, especially in football and basketball, it's pretty much African-American players, and they do feel that they have been wrong, especially with the current situation that's happening. And I wouldn't be really surprised if if the players boycott the rest of the season, because I do totally support them, and the time for change has come. And if these players who are influential don't take a stand, then you can't expect a common man to take a stand and win and cause reforms, basically. To give you an example, I mean, in India also, they say unity in diversity, people coming from different states, but every time you see, there's some kind of injustice happening even in the Indian society, whether it's religious, persecution, whether it's caste system, or whether it's even people coming from different states, especially people from the Northeast. They face a lot of flack when they are in some different states, because people still consider them to be like not Indians, and they face this problem, in most situations. And I do feel for them, and I do support whatever the players are doing and whatever steps they're taking right now. Even with the IPL, there was a lot of call for boycott of Chinese sponsors and stuff like that. But you never heard of any single influential cricket player actually calling out or something like this. So it's a unique situation, and you must laud the players, because this is something that's really important, and it's a really important cause. So yeah, I totally support them, and I do hope. But at the same time, as a fan, I want basketball to continue. But I just wish the owners, who are probably multi-millionaires, billionaires, who have a great influence in the community, can probably push for a change in the legislation, change in the reforms, so that we can have a better society.
Right, and this is what it's all about. Fighting a better society, creating equality. No matter what color your skin is or where your background is, everybody should be really be able to be treated equally. And the NBA, I have to give props to them also, because they've been doing a great job of listening to the players, of doing with all the social justice messages on the back of their jerseys, and on the court. And the NBA was the first league to shut down because of the coronavirus, and then they were the first league. And the players started this boycott that was worldwide, or excuse me, U.S. wide, and all those other leagues followed. So I think the players are doing the right thing. I think there's definitely getting headlines and getting people's attention. Now I think right now the players, as we speak, are trying to figure out a plan to be able to capitalize this huge moment in sports. And I think this is something big is going to come out of it. And like you said, Mr. Kumar, as a fan, we would like basketball to continue, but also as a human in society, we want to stand up for what's right and fight for equality.
Yeah. So this entire, if you call it, it started 4 years back with Colin Kaepernick, who is from the NFL. He started taking a knee during the national anthem. And, there was a lot of flack that he received at that time because he was all alone. And right now you can see that the entire NBA teams, everybody taking the knee during the national anthem. And, I would actually even go on to congratulate the NBA, because as a league, they also took steps to make sure that the voices of the players are heard. The players can wear messages on their jerseys. The Black Lives Matter message is on the basketball court. So yes, and I think as a league, even the NBA has done their bit. But yeah, I mean, I think it's time to take the next step.
It definitely is, and I think something needs to definitely come out of this. And I believe the players and the owners need to work together to be able to make a solution, because both have very powerful influences. And I think if they work together, then something can really come out of this, and real positive change can really happen.
Yeah.
So I think this is a very monumental. Yesterday was a very monumental day in sports. It was a very powerful moment in history, and it'll go down forever. And like I said, all the major news outlets were covering this, which was really awesome. And I think this is going to continue to get pushed forward, and we're going to see change coming very soon.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we have to get on with the show. I do hope the meeting that is going to take place between the players and the Board of Governors come to a definite solution. But let's get on with the show. We're going to have the weekly recap of the games that happened last week. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the lottery. We're going to have Karan Madhok, who's media personnel and especially covering Indian basketball and the NBA on our show today. And we will end, of course, we're going to have a tribute to none other than the late Kobe Bryant. So let's get on with the show, Mr. Patel.
All right, yeah, let's get started. So we're going to be talking about the games from last Thursday through Tuesday, and I'm going to start with the Eastern Conference. And so far, the series had been one-sided. Of course, the Bucks did rebound after losing game one. Giannis has played a lot better, taking his game to the next level, and Chris Middleton has finally found his shot, and he's actually shooting more. And the Magic are just overmatched. So the Bucks would lead that series 3-1. The game was supposed to be yesterday, but ended up being postponed. So we'll see what happens there. The Indiana Pacers and the Miami Heat. Indiana just really didn't have the horses to be able to give the Miami Heat a fight. Miami Heat were just too deep, with Goran Dragic having a huge series. Bam Adebayo was practically unguardable. He just dominated on the rebounding and just dominated inside on both sides of the floor. And the shooting of the Heat was just too much. And TJ Warren cooled off, but credit the Heat defense that they're really focusing on him, because he can go nuclear on everybody. And Malcolm Brogdon had a few games here and there, but it wasn't enough to be able to for the depth of the Heat. The Sixers and the Celtics, Mr. Kumar, going into this, we thought this was going to be a heated rivalry, one of the best series in the Eastern Conference, but it ended up being very one-sided. Of course, as many of you know, Sixers did not have Ben Simmons, but Joel Embiid did his best to try to carry the Sixers, but the players around him did step up. Tobias Harris was very disappointing, especially as a max player. But the Celtics, even without Gordon Hayward, just Kemba Walker, Jason Tatum, and the emergence of Jaylen Brown, he is really a key X factor for the Celtics, because he can play inside and outside, take the ball to the hole, get to the free throw line and shoot from the outside, and also play defense. So he's a very key player for the Celtics going forward. And the Celtics took care of the Sixers. And then, as many expected, the Raptors ended up sweeping the Nets. Even though the Nets played well that last seeding game against the Portland Trailblazers, they just didn't have the depth or the players to be able to compete with the Toronto Raptors. And the Toronto Raptors just overwhelmed the Nets with their athleticism, with their players. And I think the Toronto Raptors, as many expected, ended up sweeping the Brooklyn Nets, moving on to the next round. So now we're going to be moving on to the Western Conference, and I'll let Mr. Kumar break down those games for us.
Yeah, I mean, the West, LA versus Portland. I mean, after that first game, a lot of people had written off, Los Angeles Lakers and thought that the Portland Trailblazers might probably, sweep them according to Charles Barkley, but that didn't happen. They won 3 games in a row, and they're looking like that they're gelling well and becoming the team to beat in this playoff. Houston, OKC. The series is tied right now. The first 2 games taken by Houston, and then, of course, OKC coming back in Game 3 and Game 4. Of course, Game 4 was, especially the fourth quarter, was really bad for Houston, because I think they scored some like 5 of 26 from 3, and I'm really surprised by their strategy in that. The Denver-Utah series is something which is of great interest, because I know you and me both picked Denver to win this series, but it's pretty much been, a series between Donovan Mitchell and Jamal Murray, both going at it. And Mitchell is playing an amazing game. Clippers and Dallas. again, a very surprising result. Game, especially the game 4, where Luka Doncic, he was phenomenal, and especially with that buzzer beater, he just won the game. So, and they won the game without Kristaps Porzingis. He's not been playing for the last 2 games. He was also, I don't know what's the situation going to be when they come back. Yes, so the West is really stacked up. I think it's going to go at least a 7 series for the Houston OKC, and let's hope what's going to happen with the Denver Utah as well.
Yes, Mr. Kumar. The top series are the Denver Nuggets, Utah Jazz, and the OKC and the Houston Rockets. And I think both of those series are going to go the distance. Those have been the most competitive series so far, in the Western Conference. So those series should go long, and I'm looking forward, if the NBA does resume, to seeing how those series plays out. So now moving on, we're going to be talking about the top player performances and the top players of the week. Kumar, I'll let you go first on this.
Well, there's no doubt in my mind, actually. What an amazing play he had, that 4th game, especially going into overtime. And, that buzzer beater was just amazing because, he just took over that game single-handedly, especially with Kristaps Porzingis not playing due to some knee soreness. And, I think I'm a little bit surprised with the defense of, the LA Clippers in that last move. Of course, Leonard switched with Reggie Jackson, and Doncic was able to shoot over Reggie Jackson, who's like maybe 6'2" or 6'3". That's for me. That is the top. He's the top player of the week, as well as that was the top play in terms of whatever happened last week.
And I definitely agree with you, Mr. Kumar, that Luka Doncic is the top player of the week. But I also like to give a shout out to Donovan Mitchell and Jamal Murray, because they both played that incredible Game 3 where Donovan Mitchell had 51 points and Jamal Murray had 50 points. And then leading up, in Game 4, Donovan Mitchell had 30 points and Jamal Murray had 42 points. The shot making between those two guys has just been incredible. They're both just going back and forth and willing their teams to victory. Donovan Mitchell willed the Jazz to Game 3 victory. Jamal Murray led the Jazz to a Game 4 victory. So I think that those two have been playing very well in that series, and it is must-watch, TV. And I do also agree that the top play is a Luka Doncic game-winning shot, because you can't go with anything else, because being a 21-year-old in his first NBA playoffs, the way that he's been really showing out, and like you said on that last play, he hit Reggie Jackson with that crossover step-back dagger to win the game. And I think the Clippers were just completely shell-shocked, and Luka Doncic really carried that Mavericks team, to the victory. And it was even more impressive that, first of all, like you said, he was without Kristaps Porzingis, and he was playing on a bum ankle, and still be able to put out that performance has just been insane.
Yeah, that series has been really heated up, especially, you'd never know what the result would have been in the first game when Kristaps Porzingis was ejected. And then, of course, you have had trouble with Montrezl Harrell and Luka Doncic and Marcus Morris, of course, stepping on Luka Doncic's bum ankle. We'd never know whether it was intentional or not, or whether it was an accident. Marcus Morris claims that it was an accident. But yeah, the Denver-Utah series, it's more like a one-on-one series between, Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell. But anyway, I think we're having a great series there. So let's hope for the best. Let's move on to our, section where, of course, we also had the draft lottery last week. So go ahead, Mr. Patel.
So yes, the draft lottery also happened last week, and just to determine on the draft selection of the 14 teams that did not make the NBA playoffs. And it usually goes that the worst team usually has the best odds of winning the lottery, but then they have ping pong balls of all 14 teams that are mixed up. It's supposed to be random to see who's gonna what draft order these teams are gonna pick at. And the Minnesota Timberwolves ended up getting another number 1 overall pick, and also the Golden State Warriors also got lucky with the number 2 pick. And the Charlotte Hornets round out the top 3. So it's going to be very interesting, for these teams to see who they're going to pick, because a lot of these prospects are very unknown. The college season didn't finish, and they're not able to do workouts and doing Zoom interviews. So this draft process is going to be interesting to see how it plays out, to see who's done their homework and their research on these players.
Of course. So we also ran an audience poll in terms of who are the luckiest teams in terms of the draft lottery. Of course, in my opinion, I felt like probably Golden State Warriors really, got lucky in that sense. And you can see from the poll that, people think either the Suns or the Warriors, they're pretty much tied up for being the luckiest teams. But for the Warriors, what a wonderful situation it is, because they can really pick one of the top prospects. Even LaMelo Ball is one of the prospects, and I think Edwards, and or they can even trade and get a nice player from another team or a rebuilding team. So they get back into like championship contention almost immediately, because they'll get back Steph Curry, they'll have Klay Thompson back, they'll have Draymond Green back, and so they can really upgrade as a team, even though they're not considered like one of those teams which is like at the back end of the league.
Yes, Mr. Kumar. And all I can say is the rich keep getting richer, because, like you said, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green are all going to be coming back, and they're going to get another talented player. So it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of mix it up and whether they decide to keep Andrew Wiggins or put him on the trading block. But I'm a little surprised at the poll that the Suns were right up there with the Warriors as the luckiest team, because even though the Suns did have a great seeding games, they showed out well. They were 8-0. They have like the 10th pick. But I guess it makes sense, because in this draft, there's not really that one clear prospect like last year with the Zion Williamson. So maybe the 10th pick is as good as the second pick, and it just depends on the homework and your scouting and developing that player.
Yeah, I mean, even I'm surprised there, because, of course, but I mean, it's a good situation to be in. The Suns have a lot of talented young players. So I think next season is going to be very interesting for a team like, the Phoenix Suns.
It definitely is. And, we're going to see what's going to happen, whether they can build on that success and kind of make a move in that Western Conference. And Devin Booker did get definitely more, media coverage and attention, because always the knock on him was, well, he's just putting up these great stats, but the Suns aren't winning. Well, he did both in the bubble, put up insane stats, and the Suns went 8-0. So look for the Suns to be a rising team next year in the Western Conference.
And the unluckiest teams in the draft lottery, of course, most people pick the Wizards, and so I don't know. I mean, I think any team which pretty much is below the top five, I think is really unlucky in this situation, because this is not really a year with a great draft prospects, I would say. And as you mentioned, most of the college seasons didn't like really finish. We didn't have the NCAA tournament. We didn't have the Final Four. So it's really, it's a tough choice for a lot of teams. So I don't know how they're going to make these candidates work out. And, so it's a very tough situation for some of the teams. But I think New York Knicks, man, it's a tough situation for them. I mean, they just kept getting unlucky and unlucky. So it remains to be seen how they're going to see this lottery, and who they're going to pick in that number 8 spot.
Yes, and the Knicks did ended up last year not getting Zion Williamson, and this year they're going to be the 8th pick when they were projected to be 6th. And I don't know if I am able to trust their scouting, because a couple of years ago they picked Kevin Knox, and he's not really turned out that well. So hopefully the Knicks did their homework and be able to effectively find a player that fits their system. But we'll see. The Knicks are definitely one of the teams, along with the Wizards, that have been unlucky.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Knicks situation with a Knicks fan, because we're going to have introduce our guest right now. Let's bring in Karan Madhok, who's a media personnel from India, who's been writing about Indian basketball. He's has his own blog called Hoopistani. He has his own podcast called Hoop Darshan. He is also written for Slam magazine and NBA India. So He's probably one of those people who's prominent in the Indian basketball circle without being a player, but as a media representative. So let's bring in Karan Madhok into our show.
Hello, welcome, Karan, to the Patel and Kumar show. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you guys for having me. Excited to be here.
Thank you. We're excited to have you. So I gotta ask, being the diehard Knicks fan that you are, it must have been tough, watching the lottery last week when the Knicks.
Just a second. I'm sorry. What are you saying? Can you say that?
So I gotta ask, being a diehard Knicks fan, after watching the draft lottery last week, the Knicks were projected to pick 6, but ended up falling to 8, and this rubs salt in the wound because last year they missed out on Zion Williamson, and this year they got an 8th pick. So how has that kind of been for you, seeing the Knicks kind of being unlucky in the lottery?
So to be honest, this year I didn't really care. Like falling from 6 to 8 isn't that big a deal. Like that happens quite a lot, and really it's a pretty trash class of prospects relatively. So even if we had gotten the top pick this year, it would have been maybe slightly better. This year, I'm sort of not even counting on the draft that much, to be honest. Last year, missing out on Zion, it's not just the Knicks. Every team that missed out on Zion and Ja Morant should be crying right now. It's just that, it's kind of fun to pick on the Knicks or whatever. But but I do have faith in RJ Barrett. I think he's obviously not at the level of those two guys, but he is going to be a very good prospect. And we picked, in my opinion, the best player we could have picked at 3 last year. So not that disappointed in that pick. And this year, whatever, 6 to 8, I can live with it.
So hopefully they don't trade him like they traded Kristaps Porzingis and Tim Hardaway. The other problem is it's just not about picking the right player, but it's keeping them.
Yeah. I'm still very sad about losing Kristaps. He was one of my favorite players. Obviously, he still is. But I have more faith. I think this is the first offseason in a long time where they've actually done really smart management decisions. Like they've hired Leon Rose. They've hired World Wide West. They've got a bunch of people on board who seem to have really good connections around the NBA and seem to really be patient with the decision making. So in that sense, I have a little bit more faith in management than I usually have. But as long as James Dolan's the owner, we're all living by a thread.
Yeah. And especially that hat is probably the last merchandise that was New York Knicks merchandise that was sold. Probably you're going to get an award for that.
I'm responsible for 100% of New York Knicks merchandise purchases in India. I don't think there's a single person who has intentionally bought New York Knicks merchandise. By mistake, kisi ko mil gayi, so that's different. But I'm the only one who intentionally does it.
Yeah.
So you're a diehard fan, so that's great. You connect, through the tough times. So
it's literally die hard because I'm always dying as a Knicks fan. There's that's the literal definition of being a Knicks fan.
I know. Sorry, only you and Stephen A are the hardcore fans, I guess. But anyway, I think let's move on to a little bit of somber mood after we had fun at the expense of the Knicks. Of course, you heard about what happened last night in the NBA, especially with the teams boycotting the games. And of course, they're going to be discussing on what the future is going to be for the NBA this season. So what are your thoughts, especially with you being in the US? What kind of sentiments are you getting from the US, as well as what are your thoughts on what's happening in the NBA?
The NBA is a majority black league, and it's black players who have made the NBA successful. And it really is the success and failures of the league relies on their talents and their popularity and their charisma and everything that they bring to the league. So if they don't feel comfortable with the way their society is, then we have no right and nobody has a right to say that they should feel a different way. I saw someone tweet yesterday, and I forgot who it was, but they said that sports and entertainment are sort of a luxury of a functioning society. But if a society isn't functioning, we can't ignore that and sort of distract ourselves with sports and entertainment. We tried it. The bubble is working really well. This hasn't been a pandemic problem. It's sort of miraculous that we are talking about basketball during a pandemic anyways, right? But if society is not functional and these players don't feel comfortable for the way society is treating people like them. So I'm 100% behind whatever decision. Of course, Vinod, you said earlier that as basketball fans, we are obviously really sad that there's no basketball to watch. It was weird yesterday not having any games, but some things are bigger than basketball. I hope they can, this is having the impact that I think they intended to have. They are creating conversation. They are making some people angry. They're making some people happy, and that's the point. The point is for people to talk about it, and hopefully, I hope the season finishes, but it's up to them.
Yeah, and that's very well said, Karan, because these NBA players are trying to use their platform to be able to enact change, and these owners, definitely need to be more involved because they have the influences to be able to make social change. So now moving on, we're going to be doing a tribute now, to the Black Mamba, Kobe Bryant, who tragically, passed away earlier this year. And for this tribute, we're going to be talking about the top Kobe performances. I know there's so many to choose from. He had a very long and illustrious career, winning 5 championships and multiple MVPs. So, Karan, I would like to let you start out with what is your greatest Kobe performance?
My favorite Kobe, it has to be the 81-point game. And I know it came in the regular season and against a Raptors team that was really terrible that year, and it's sort of in the larger scheme of things it was meaningless, but it's such an iconic moment. He did what I didn't think was humanly possible, was in the modern era reach 80 points in 2006, I think it was, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
To do that, not in the 60s, not when Will Chamberlain is like a foot taller than everyone else and no one else in the league is half as athletic as him. He's a guard and he scored 81 points. He did a lot of the scoring from the perimeter. So it was, I still get shivers remembering that game. I remember exactly where I was when it was happening. And I know he's won 5 championships and he's done so many greater things team-wise, but that 81-point performance has to be his most legendary game.
Yeah, it's definitely up there, and it was just incredible because they needed, every one of those points because they were down, up until the third quarter. So he really willed them to victory. So for me, my greatest Kobe performance has to be the Kobe farewell game, scoring 60 points against the Jazz, because the years before that he was dealing with ACL problems and he wasn't really the same player that he was before. But he willed his team to another victory. His last game of the season, he ended up saying Mamba out, and even though he's scoring 60 points and shooting 60%. From the field, I think that was just an incredible performance, and it's the most typical Kobe performance ever, and it was a great way to really go out.
Yeah, in the Indian context, it's like Sachin Tendulkar getting that farewell test series or, one day international or something. And, the way he performed in that particular game, it was outstanding, of course. But my favorite is, of course, the 55-point performance against Michael Jordan in I think 2003, I suppose, because that was the game. I think it was the last game for Michael Jordan in Staples Center. He was wearing the Wizards uniform, of course, but it was almost like handing over that baton from one demigod to another, and it's like passing. I mean. It's my time is up, and now it's up to Kobe Bryant to carry on that basketball fanfare. So so he scored 42 points just in the first half. He tallied 55 points in total, 15 of 29 shooting, and 9 of 13 from 3. So it was a great performance, and that tops it up. And some other performances are, of course, is. Olympic performance in 2008 against Spain, and he had that 61-point performance against New York Knicks in Madison Square Garden. So
everyone has their best games at Madison Square Garden. It's a pity that they don't just come and play for us. They could do that every single day. It makes it much easier.
They do it right in front of Spike Lee, who's sitting courtside.
Right,
Absolutely. So we ran a poll, with the audience in terms of who they thought were the finest performances by Kobe Bryant. Of course, we had the 81-point Raptors game, 4 straight 50-point games and the Madison Square Garden performance. So let's take a look at the results because I think we would like to know what the audience thinks they thought were the best performances by Kobe Bryant. So most people think that the 60-point farewell game is what they picked. So they all went with Mr. Patel's pick. But the 81 points Raptors game is also, hanging in right there.
No, yes, for sure. And those are two of his, best performances, and you can't go wrong with either one of them. And like I said earlier, Kobe has so many, great performances, and he's made an impact not only on the court but also off the court. So rest in peace, the late great Kobe Bryant, and your memory, will never be forgotten. And he's really been influenced by a lot of players today, with the Jason Tatums, Kyrie Irvings, Kawhi Leonard's, that Mamba mentality will definitely live on forever.
Absolutely. And just to get your opinion, Karan, I mean, you've, of course, covered Indian basketball, NBA, and everything. How was Kobe's influence in Indian basketball or in the Indian context?
No, it's huge because here's the thing. Guys like Magic and MJ, Larry Bird, like that generation of players, I think are considered almost like gods. But by the time NBA broadcasting started to become ubiquitous in India, by the time it started to become big, it was mid to late 90s. Before that, I think most of us, I mean, me personally, I was too young to see Jordan in his prime. By the time I got into the game, Jordan was almost retiring. So to me, Jordan is the greatest player ever, but at the same time, I didn't personally get to experience it. I didn't grow up on him. Whereas as the TV hit, as the broadcast in India hit, it was the Kobe Shaq era, it was the Tim Duncan era, it was the Allen Iverson era, And this era, the beginning of this era was dominated by Kobe and Shaq. And Kobe especially because Shaq is almost superhuman. You can't really try and be Shaq. He's so big and dominant, and no child grows up thinking like, I'm bada hoke main Shaq banunga. Like no one can grow up and be him. You have to be blessed with what he has. Whereas Kobe thing was even, of course, he's all-time great athlete, but I think his legacy or the way he was marketed was more about, here's a guy who really worked harder than anybody else. It was all about working hard. And that's something that, our Indian parents have really talked into our heads since we were kids. Ki beta, you have to study really hard. That's the way to success. So I think that's why a lot of Indians related to Kobe a lot more. And I remember when Kobe retired, and then again after his death, I spoke to a lot of Indian basketball stars of the last 15, 20 years about who their favorite players are. So a lot of them said LeBron, a lot of them said Kevin Durant, a lot of them said MJ. But by far and wide, Kobe was the number one choice. I would say one out of every two players was like, Kobe is my guy. Because this is his generation and just his mentality, his legacy, they can relate to him or they want to relate to him more than anybody else.
Absolutely. I mean, Kobe was a great influence, and you can see from the images that, there were a lot of artists who made... So, yeah, I mean, this is just, right after his death, there was a lot of candlelight marches in Meerut, in Kerala, in Bangalore, in Mumbai. So that shows, the kind of popularity, a player like Kobe had, and the influence that he had, especially among Indian basketball players. So it was great to see these things, but it was really sad that his life ended in, it was so short. So, I mean, I wish he had gone on to live longer.
I just want to give a shout out to Gopal and Eklavya for sort of collecting all of these memorials of Kobe after his death around India. Eklavya did an incredible job at making sure everyone was sending them their memorials. So all of a sudden there was like a whole gamu of 15, 20, 25 different people, different basketball courts all around the country celebrating Kobe. And that was a really cool thing to see. I didn't think that would happen. And so shout out for making that happen.
So as you're shouting out, let's shout out for Gopal as well, because it's his birthday today.
Hey.
Happy birthday, Gopal.
Happy birthday to Gopal, who's our executive producer. He's got a very cushy title, at least, in our show.
one of these days, his birthday gift will be India getting a professional basketball league. But right now, he has to suffer.
I mean, I think by the time he'll retire by the time the professional league comes up.
I just
So
want to be alive to see it. That's all it is. Just want to be alive to see it.
So, yeah, one of our audience is asking, will the season be continued tomorrow? Of course, I mean, we don't know yet. There's a very high chance that, probably the season won't continue. I think dialogues are going to take place between the players, between the teams, the league, etc. So, as a fan, I hope the season continues. And as citizen, I would totally support the players if they decide not to continue with the season.
Yes, and right now they're still in talks. As Mr. Kumar said about whether if they do decide to move on to the season, how will they be able to push their social justice movement? And I don't think anything's going to happen, this weekend. I think they're just going to be in talks, trying to figure things out, make a game plan. So we should be able to hear some stuff coming out soon after this Board of Governors meeting and after the players have made a plan.
Yeah, let's hope for the best. Gopal says thank you for the birthday wishes. So at least at least the executive producer is watching us live. But nevertheless, I think let's move on to our next section, which is the spiciest section on YouTube. It is called the Indian Tadka section, Karan. So get ready for some some Indian flavor to this wonderful show.
About to get spicy.
Yeah, so I mean, you did you like us in that turban and everything and
That's amazing. That's such a cool graphic. I think Animesh is doing all of that, right? Yeah. Another shout out. Great job.
Yeah.
Shout out to
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So of course, Karan, just to give you a little bit of a brief, we're going to be talking about the Indian media and its role in terms of Indian basketball and of course NBA. And you have covered both to a very large extent. You had your blog that started. I think you were like way before time in terms of blogging. Especially about Indian basketball, that too. I mean, a topic that I don't think any writer chooses in a place in a country like India. You have your Hoopistani blogs and Hoop Darshan, which is your podcast. Of course, I'm a little bit sad that you haven't called me in any of your Hoop Darshan episodes. And that's why I started my own show.
You sort of stole my thunder. I was going to use this platform to publicly invite you for the next episode, but you have sort of spoiled that already. So you're invited for the next one.
Thank you. So I mean, that's like self-advertising,
You stole my thunder there.
So Shivam, please go ahead. I mean, I think you wanted to ask a few questions to Karan.
Yes, Scott, and I wanted to ask you, a couple questions. You had your, Hoopistani blog, and you're a huge, basketball junkie. Writing on both the NBA and Indian basketball. So I kind of wanted to ask you your inspiration for starting that Hoopistani blog and your Hoop Darshan podcast.
So Hoopistani blog was more out of it came more out of necessity than actual. There has never been a business plan for me with the blog or any plan of like earning anything because it's Indian basketball. No one plans to earn anything in this field. It's the equivalent of going to a gym to play basketball, but all the lights are off. It's night and you're just shooting. Kahin na kahin, maybe something will go in, but you're most likely going to miss. But really, it was. I was a big NBA fan growing up, and I wanted to find out more about basketball in our own country. And basically, as I was working with one of my earlier journalism jobs, I ended up interviewing Vishesh Bhriguvanshi, who has recently won the Arjuna Award. And he was an 18-year-old rising star back then. And he was from my hometown. I'm from Varanasi. He was from Varanasi too. And it just shocked me that there's a huge basketball talent from my own city who I knew almost nothing about. I'm going back, 2007-8 right now. And I almost felt ashamed. Like I call myself a big NBA fan and I know nothing about basketball stars in my own country, right? or in my own city. So it became like a search for news myself. I wanted to find out who else is good in Indian basketball. Where can I find information about the national tournaments, the national team, who are they playing next? And I realized that there was no consistent place, including the Basketball Federation of India, who were doing it consistently, putting the news out. So it was out of that hunt or the curiosity for news that I started the blog. And I specifically did a blog instead of a website, because a website means I have to have everything correct all the time. But whereas with blogs, it's more of a personal opinion, my personal search, Of course, I got really lucky because Slam magazine, they published a few of my articles very early. So it sort of gave me, it gave me this sort of encouragement that, okay, I'm not just shooting basketballs in the dark. Maybe someone is reading. So in that sense, that eventually led to Hoopistani. And Hoop Darshan came up because my co-host, okay, I'm going to give another shout out. I'm good at this. Lakshman, who is just incredible, one of the great Indian basketball fans as well. He reached out to me and said we should totally start a podcast. This was about 6 or 7 years ago. And we've been doing it since. We don't earn anything off it. There's no business plan. We just want to get together and talk about hoops, and specifically Indian hoops, and some NBA too. So and still chugging along.
Yeah. And Bhushan, or somebody from the audience says that no one covers Indian basketball better than Hoopistani. So that's definitely true. I could second that. Reading your work has just been incredible. So, Karan, you cover Indian basketball. So kind of how have you seen the Indian basketball grow and evolve since you've been covering it?
So the biggest positive evolution has been, and this is going back to, so 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when I was looking for news, it was really difficult to find. The biggest positive evolution has been social media, because now players are able to get news out about themselves, by themselves, So it's huge now. Guys like Vishesh Brighuvanshi or the Singh sisters or Gitu or Anita, like they have become, at least in the basketball followers sort of views, they're becoming bigger names. We get to know more about them just because through social media they can reach out, which was not possible 12 years ago because mainstream media barely covers Indian basketball news. So that is definitely a positive. But in terms of like the larger basketball scheme, I mean, Vinod, we are still, I don't know, we were more optimistic 10 years ago, right? I was sure a league is going to begin just 1 year from now, and we are still there. We are still chugging along, maybe 2 steps back, 1 step forward. That's how we're moving.
I totally echo your sentiments. I think you started writing with the hope that there would be a professional league in India.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, there was optimism then because, of course, Reliance partnered with BFI, and all those kind of things happened, and we were extremely excited as basketball fans, right? And as you as a basketball writer, that would have exploded the content for you, right? If you just had a professional league. But my honest opinion is that I don't think as players, as a development strategy, we are still there yet in terms of starting a professional league. Because there has to be a good flow of, youngsters coming in. There has got to be a good flow of, good players, of course, because it'll end up like the ISL in the first 3 or 4 years, where we try to get really retired players who are like 40 years old, retired 5 years back, trying to play in this professional league. I don't want it to be that way. I want it to be very organic, so that we can attract good talent from overseas. And this is also a good platform where we can actually say Indian origin players from other countries are not considered as foreign players, right? They can be considered as Indian players. And maybe we can go the European way in terms of having caps in terms of international players and stuff like that. So, that's just the model. But, I think we are at least another 5 years away.
That's a really good point. Like, there needs to be a grassroots development of players for, before you start a league like this. But that's the pity. Like when 10 years ago, the promise was made, or when it wasn't a promise, but the hope was sort of kindled that, with the Reliance sponsorship, that the league will start soon. My hope was that, I wasn't expecting the league to start straight away, but my expectation was that the grassroots strengthening will start straight away. But we've been, if you're 5 years away now, I thought we would be 5 years away 10 years ago. And I think that's the big, that's the big disappointment.
Yeah. So, I mean, according to you, we have never started that process. So that's why we always say it's 5 years
Yeah,
from
yeah.
now, So I think it's going to be just like the Philadelphia 76ers. We need to start the process
The process.
and then fire Brett Brown and dismantle Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. Yeah. So I mean, let's move on to our next section. Of course, this is something which is close to your heart.
Yeah.
But I would also like to point out, congratulations first to Vishesh Briguvanshi. There's no doubt, he's definitely one of the greatest players to come out of Indian basketball. I just hope that he was not injured and he would have got to play, overseas as well. He was selected in the Australian NBL, but of course, because of his injury, he couldn't play. But congratulations on receiving the Arjuna Award for 2019-2020. But there is something different about the Ganga, right? Because Varanasi, is producing players like we grow tomatoes in our backyard.
It's very strange because no one would think, Varanasi, you think of the ghats, you think of Ganga, you think of pan, you think of saris, but you have to think about basketball because, and especially because of UP College, where they sort of set up a really good system about 25 years ago, and which has produced players like Vishesh, Trideep, and of course the Singh sisters, and many more of this current generation too. Vishesh definitely is, of course, one of my favorite players of all time, and you're right. I think he might be one of the greatest guards India has ever produced. I really wish he had a chance to play abroad too, but because there was a point where he was an Asia level guard. We have a lot of good players, but only rarely do we get players who could be in all Asia teams. So I would say, for example, this decade, the only players who I would consider all Asia have been Vishesh, Amjot, and Amritpal. To really be the kind of players who play at Asian level and could make a top 5 team. Yeah, so that's one disappointment. But congrats to him for winning the Arjuna Award. I hope it opens doors for the other guys I've named to also be considered for these awards because they have done so much for Indian basketball.
Yeah.
Sure.
And Anamish says a shout out to the UP college basketball court.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Did you play there as well? Were you from the same college?
No, I was not from the same college. I was actually in boarding school most of my life, but I would go back, and every time I would go and go back to Varanasi, I would try and I'd make some excuse. Oh, I have to interview this person. They have really good lal peda right outside the court, so I'll make some excuse to get there and meet the greats.
And Bhushan's also saying another comment: Principal Singh's future is looking bright, and he would be probably the first Indian player to play at the NBA. So, Karan, I got to ask you your thoughts about Principal Singh getting a historic moment, being able to play in the G League, being the first Indian player to play.
It's awesome, and so he won't be the first Indian player to play in the G League. Both Satnam and Amjot have gotten to play, but he may be the first Indian player to play in that G League select team.
Yeah, G League select team.
This year.
Yes.
Again, incredibly proud of him. Vinod, you're talking about the Ganga water. There's something in the butter of Punjab too. The murg makhani that they collect with these guys, because all of them just become these superstars, tall, athletic, guys who can handle the ball. I hope Principal has he picked up the game a little bit late, like a lot of these guys end up doing, but they're very important because they can open doors for the next generation. When young players see guys like Amjot and Principal not only make it but also become famous in a way for basketball, I think it gives hope that this game isn't entirely in India, that this game isn't entirely hopeless, that there is something you can aim at.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Punjab, Ludhiana, nobody can forget that it has been a nursery for basketball. Amritpal, Amjot, of course, Principal now, and Jagdeep, Talwinder, So yeah, the mainstays of Indian basketball have all come from the Ludhiana Basketball Academy. So we were trying to say that Principal might be the first player to maybe play in the NBA, get some minutes, hopefully, especially with the G League select team.
Right.
So listen, guys, the Knicks have an 8th pick. Principal Singh is available. Just want to let them know. If I would give some advice, it's not a great draft anyways. They might as well pick this guy, and all of a sudden they'll have this huge Indian fan base. He might even get voted into the All-Star game. Who knows?
Right, it'll be smart marketing, right? Be able to appeal to the Indian fan base, as you said.
In the US as well as in India,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what we have in store for. Thank you very much for coming onto the show, and discussing your views. Of course, we just hope, something constructive comes out of the meeting today with the NBA players, the teams, etc. So you're getting to watch it, pretty much from the US. And I believe you're stuck there because of the pandemic and everything, and you're still, in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I probably stuck here for a few more months, but I'm hoping to get back to India as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's nothing much happening in terms of Indian basketball, so there's no hurry for you to come back.
Listen, Indian basketball is ahead of the curve. We boycotted playing years ago. NBA is just catching up with us.
They're catching up to Indian basketball.
Exactly.
Well, thank you very much, Karan. It was great to hear your thoughts, about Indian basketball, on the Arjuna Awards, the NBA boycott, and then, of course, the New York Knicks. So hopefully, great days are ahead, for the Knicks, and best of luck with everything going forward. So thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah. See you soon on Hoop Darshan, and probably hope to see you again back in Patel and Kumar NBA talk show as well.
Anytime, guys. You guys are doing an incredible job. I'm so happy you exist. I'm a big fan of anyone doing anything to promote Indian basketball, and really will be rooting for you guys. And Vinod, I will catch you on Hoop Darshan soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karan.
Have a good day. Well, that was insightful, and we had a very nice segment there in terms of discussing Karan's views on, of course, Kobe Bryant's best performances, his insight on Indian media and its role in terms of promoting Indian basketball as well as the NBA, and of course discussing his hometown hero right now, Vishesh Briguvanshi. So people like, share, subscribe to our channel, Ekalavya's on YouTube and Facebook, and of course connect with us with your messages and comments on Twitter and Instagram at Patel and Kumar. So Shivam, what do you have to say?
No, yes, it was great to hear, from Karan. He's a big basketball junkie, very successful basketball writer. So it was great to kind of, like you said, hear his insights on a variety of things, the NBA, Indian basketball, of course, Kobe Bryant and Principal Singh. And hopefully, the Knicks will be better because he's been a loyal Knicks fan. So hope the Knicks, at least have success in the future for his sake.
Absolutely. So, but before we leave, we have a webinar coming up on the 29th of August, that is day after tomorrow at 7 p.m. It's going to be conducted by David Shot Dr. Jones and Miley Jones, who are going to be demonstrating strength and conditioning skills. And of course, we have the pleasure of also having Dr. Paul Sainz, who is the team physician for the San Antonio Spurs, and he'll be sharing his views on injury management and rehabilitation, and of course, sharing some of his stories with the San Antonio Spurs. So please have a look at the promo video.
Namaste, India. Join me, DJ David Jones, and Miley Jones at the Shooting for Success Gym to improve your strength and conditioning to help you be a better player in the sport that you choose to avoid injuries.
Join us live from the Shooting for Success Gym this Saturday, August 29th at 7 p.m. India time. Shukriya!
Shukriya.
Hi, I'm Dr. Paul Sainz, team physician of the NBA San Antonio Spurs. Please join me this Saturday, the 29th of August at 7 p.m. local time in India for a discussion of a variety of sports medicine topics that will include common sports injuries, injury prevention, and contemporary rehabilitation techniques. I may even share a few stories with you regarding my 21 years with the San Antonio Spurs and being fortunate enough to work with the big three of Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, and Tony Parker. Hope to see you this Saturday.
All right, if you can't get enough of me and Mr. Kumar, don't forget to join us Saturday, August 29th at 7 p.m. India time, as we're going to be with Coach DJ, Miley, and the Spurs doctor, Dr. Paul Sines, and we're going to be doing strength and conditioning drills and talking about injury prevention. So make sure you be there, and we look forward to seeing you all there.
Yeah, and just hope the discussion between the NBA players, the NBA teams, the Board of Governors, everything takes place well. We do support Black Lives Matter,
Yep.
and we totally wholeheartedly support the NBA players in their actions. So thank you very much once again, and hope to see you again next Thursday, 7 p.m. at the Patel and Kumar NBA Talk Show.
Yes, and be sure to subscribe and comment on our YouTube and Instagram channels. You can get a live shout out, and we look forward to continuing to have our conversations, about social injustice, and kudos to the players for making their stand, and we're going to have change, and we're going to continue to make our society better. So we look forward to seeing you all again next week, and continue to stay safe and healthy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.